There are gas stations that feel too quiet, too still, where the fluorescent lights buzz like flies circling something long dead. You've been on the road for hours, the night pressing in like a living thing. You pull in, desperate for a quick stop, a drink, maybe a smoke, and definitely a bathroom. But when you step into the restroom, the mirror doesn't reflect you. No fog, no trick of the light. You're simply gone. Your heart starts racing. Is it a trick, a glitch, or have you stepped into something older, darker, something that watches from the other side? This isn't just a mirror. This is a door, and it's open. Have you ever looked into a mirror and felt like something else was looking back? What would you do if your reflection disappeared? If you love spine-tingling horror stories, like, subscribe, and share, because this is just the beginning, and you don't want to miss what's hiding behind the glass. The road had thinned into silence long before Seth noticed the sign for the gas station. It jutted up from the side of the cracked asphalt like a skeletal finger, the flickering neon barely clinging to life. He was somewhere in northern Nevada, or maybe Utah. His phone had long since lost signal, and the GPS had gone dark 3 hours back. It was just past 1, and the desert felt like it was swallowing the sky. He pulled into the lot slowly, tires crunching over gravel and broken glass. The overhead lights cast a harsh yellow glow on the single rusted-out pump and a lopsided sign that read Mason's Last Stop, cold drinks, hot food, clean restrooms. The place looked like it hadn't seen a customer in decades. Seth wasn't picky. He climbed out of the car, shoulders tight, jaw aching from hours of clenching. The wind cut against his neck, dry and bitter, and carried with it the faintest smell of rot. A bell above the door jingled weakly as he pushed into the convenience store, but the place was empty. Not just of people, empty of sound. No humming refrigerators, no buzzing lights, just stillness. There was a narrow hallway to the back, a faded sign reading restrooms hanging slightly askew. He hesitated, glancing at the unmanned counter. No cashier, no music, just that same heavy silence pressing in around him like wet cloth. The bathroom door creaked when he pushed it open. Dim, flickering light overhead. A cracked sink, yellowed tiles. It smelled faintly of bleach and something else, something sweet and sour. But it was clean, surprisingly. The stall door was closed, and he didn't want to test his luck with it. He walked to the sink, turned the faucet, and watched water trickle out, rusty at first, then clear. And that's when he looked up. The mirror didn't reflect him. No fog, no distortion. The sink was there, the tiles, even the stall behind him, but not him. Seth raised his hand. Nothing moved in the glass. He leaned forward until his face should have been just inches away from the surface. Still nothing. He touched the mirror, cold, solid, his breath caught in his throat. Suddenly, the flickering light above buzzed loud, then popped, throwing the room into darkness. Seth stumbled back, heart hammering. What the hell? The door slammed shut behind him. He spun, hands scrabbling for the knob. It wouldn't budge. Locked. The mirror began to glow. A pale silvery light seeped from its center like veins of liquid mercury. Shapes swirled inside, too fast to see but too real to ignore. A sound like whispering started, low and unintelligible, like 1,000 voices just below the surface. Seth pounded on the door. "Hey, anyone out there? I'm stuck." Something answered, not from the hallway, from the mirror. A shadow shifted inside it, then another. Figures with long warped limbs, faces that blurred and twisted, as if submerged underwater. One pressed its hand against the glass from the inside, and smiled. Its teeth were too many, too sharp, its eyes hollow, black sockets oozing something thick and dark. It tapped the glass once, then twice, then a long dragging screech, like nails across a chalkboard, split the silence. The glass began to crack, spiderwebbing from the spot the thing's hand had touched. Seth backed into the stall, crouching instinctively. His breathing was ragged. The light flickered again. Another screech. The cracks spread further, then silence. For a moment, nothing moved. No light, no whispers, just the sound of his own heartbeat slamming in his ears. Then the door swung open with a gentle creak. Seth bolted out, his footsteps echoing down the hallway. The store was just as empty as before, but now the overhead lights were out completely. Only the dim green glow of the exit sign above the door guided him. He sprinted to his car, fumbled with his keys, and slammed the door shut behind him. The engine sputtered, but roared to life. He didn't look back. He couldn't. He drove for miles before the road finally met a town, small and quiet, but blessedly real. He parked in front of a diner still shaking, and stumbled inside. A woman behind the counter looked up, startled. "You okay?" Seth opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His hands trembled. His eyes darted to the mirrors behind the counter. Normal. His reflection was there. Everything looked fine. But when he went to the restroom in the diner to splash his face, something made his blood run cold. A small sticker was peeling off the corner of the mirror. It read, "Mason's last stop, do not remove." And in the reflection, behind him, something moved. Seth's fingers froze on the edge of the sink. His reflection in the diner bathroom mirror was blurry, like the edges of his face were dissolving into the glass. But there was no mist, no condensation, nothing that could explain it. He blinked rapidly, trying to focus, but the blurry edges only deepened. And then he saw it, a figure. It was tall, cloaked in shadow, standing just behind him. Not quite a reflection, something else. It wore the same form, same posture, but the eyes were wrong. Hollow pits, black and empty, staring straight at him. Its mouth was twisted into a grin that looked like it had been carved into its face with a jagged knife. It didn't belong. Seth jerked back, knocking over the soap dispenser. The figure stayed in place, unmoving, just watching. His heart pounded harder. He wiped his face with his hands, eyes locked on the glass, hoping that when he looked up again, the thing would be gone. But no, it stayed, grinning wider now, as if it knew something Seth didn't. His breath was shallow, quick. He spun around, looking over his shoulder, but the bathroom was empty. Just the faint hum of the fluorescent light above him. He looked back into the mirror. The figure was still there, standing just inches away from his reflection. Leaning closer, he could almost hear its breath, slow and ragged, as though it was inhaling him. Seth stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the edge of the sink. He had to get out of here. He had to leave. He wasn't even sure if he could trust what he was seeing anymore. His mind felt like it was cracking under the pressure. He turned and ran out of the bathroom, breathless. His legs shook, but he made it back to the diner counter, where the woman was still watching him with concern. She didn't seem to notice anything unusual, and Seth fought to keep his voice steady. "I need to get out of here," he said, the words coming out in a choked whisper. The woman tilted her head. "You're not looking so hot. You sure you're all right?" Seth didn't answer. He just grabbed his keys, practically bolting for the door. He could feel the thing's eyes on him, even as he rushed out into the night. The wind was colder now, the air pressing against him, as if it was trying to hold him back. Every corner of the parking lot seemed darker than it should have been. He reached his car and threw himself inside, slamming the door shut behind him. His hands shook as he fumbled with the ignition. The engine sputtered, stalled, and then finally roared to life. His foot pressed hard on the accelerator, tires screeching as he sped away from the diner in the town. But the shadows on the road, they seemed to move with him. He didn't stop, not until he saw a gas station ahead, the sign barely illuminated by a dying neon light. It seemed familiar, too familiar. The same flickering lights, the same eerie stillness. But this time, he couldn't turn away. He had no choice. He pulled into the lot, the gravel crunching under his tires. A thin layer of dust covered everything, like the place had been forgotten by time itself. And yet the lights inside the station were on. Seth stepped out of his car, his eyes darting around, hoping to find some kind of explanation, something that would make sense of all this madness. But there was nothing, only the gas station and the relentless buzzing of the neon sign. He walked inside, the bell above the door jingling. As he stepped into the dim store, it smelled faintly of stale coffee, but the air felt cold, colder than it had any right to be. Behind the counter, an old man sat in a tattered armchair, his eyes half closed, as if he had been waiting there for years. The shelves were filled with dusty bottles of soda, snacks, and cans of soup. There was something unnatural about it all, like the place was suspended in time, stuck between two worlds. But Seth didn't have the energy to care anymore. His mind was too busy unraveling, trying to make sense of the strange figures, the disappearing reflections, and the overwhelming sense that something was wrong. The old man didn't move when Seth approached. His eyes didn't even seem to register Seth's presence. Seth cleared his throat, but the man still didn't respond. His skin was ashen, his face a maze of deep wrinkles. "Hey," Seth said, his voice wavering. I just need some gas. And maybe some direction." The old man's gaze finally shifted, slowly, deliberately, but his eyes were clouded, unfocused. "Directions," he rasped. "You sure you want to go that way?" Seth blinked. "What?" The old man's lips twitched into the faintest of smiles. "Not many come through here anymore," he muttered. "And the ones who do, they don't leave the same." Seth frowned. He was too tired to deal with cryptic nonsense. "I just need gas, old man." The old man didn't answer right away. Instead, he slowly turned his head to the side, and that's when Seth noticed it. Just behind the man, there was another mirror on the wall, one that didn't seem to belong. It was old and cracked, surrounded by grime and dark smudges. Seth's heart skipped a beat as he saw something in the reflection of that mirror. A figure, lurking in the corner. It was tall, just like the thing he'd seen earlier, with long twisted limbs, and those same black, empty eyes. But now it wasn't just a shadow in the mirror. It was moving toward him. The old man's voice broke the silence. "You see it, don't you?" Seth's blood ran cold. He wanted to run, wanted to scream, but his body wouldn't obey. His gaze was locked on the mirror, on the figure that was now taking steps toward him. The old man's eerie smile never wavered. "You should have stayed away from that bathroom," he whispered, barely audible over the whispering that was now creeping into Seth's ears, growing louder with each passing second. Seth's breath caught in his throat. His feet felt glued to the floor, his body rigid as he stared at the figure in the cracked mirror behind the old man. It was closer now, just a few feet away from the reflection of Seth's own shaking form. Its twisted limbs seemed to stretch unnaturally, like something that had been bent out of shape and was now painfully trying to fit into its own skin. The figure's hollow eyes locked onto his. There was something unnerving about them, not just emptiness, but a deep, gnawing hunger that radiated out of them. The thing's mouth was agape, like a wound that had never healed, stretching too wide, exposing rows upon rows of teeth that were too sharp, too numerous to be anything human. Seth didn't blink. He couldn't. The old man's voice rasped again, softer this time, as if he was savoring the moment. "You really should have stayed away from that place, boy." Seth's pulse hammered in his chest, and the air around him felt thick, as if it had turned to molasses, weighing him down, suffocating him. He swallowed, trying to find his voice, but his throat was dry, his words stuck somewhere deep inside him. What is that thing?" Seth finally managed to croak, his eyes never leaving the mirror. The old man chuckled, a low, rasping sound that seemed to vibrate the very air. "It's not a thing, boy. It's what happens when you step into places you don't belong. Places where the rules don't work anymore." Seth tried to turn away, tried to shake the feeling that the air in the store was growing colder, heavier, but his gaze was drawn back to the reflection in the mirror, to the creature that was now standing just behind him in the reflection. Its bony fingers reached forward, and Seth could feel the skin on the back of his neck prickle with a cold that had nothing to do with the temperature. Are you saying that's me?" Seth asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The old man didn't answer right away. Instead, his hands trembled as he reached behind the counter, his fingers moving with unsettling precision. He produced a tattered, old newspaper from beneath the counter, its edges yellowed with age. Without a word, he handed it to Seth. The headline on the front page made Seth's heart sink. "Local gas station owner vanishes. No one ever found." Seth turned the paper over in his hands, his eyes scanning the article. It described a small-town gas station owner who had vanished mysteriously years ago. No traces of him, no clue, just an eerie absence. But what struck Seth most was the photograph at the bottom of the page. It was a photo of the old man standing outside the gas station, his face younger but unmistakably the same. His eyes, though, were different, bright and alert, not the dead, distant eyes Seth saw now. "Who is this?" Seth asked, his voice shaking. The old man just stared at him, a faint, unsettling grin stretching across his weathered face. "You're looking at a man who's been here longer than anyone This station, this mirror." He gestured vaguely to the cracked mirror behind him. "It's a trap. Once you look into it, you're never really gone." The room seemed to grow even colder, the air turning thick with an unnatural pressure that made Seth's chest tighten. He couldn't breathe. The creature in the mirror was moving closer now, its fingers grazing the surface of the glass with a sickeningly slow drag. "You should have left when you had the chance, boy," the old man said softly, his voice now carrying a strange sense of finality. Seth turned to run, but before he could take a single step, the door to the gas station slammed shut with a force that rattled the walls. The windows shook, and the lights overhead flickered violently. Seth's heart raced, and his thoughts scrambled. The creature behind him, no, in front of him, was getting closer. Its face in the mirror was now right up against the glass. Its jagged smile split wide open as it reached out with long, gnarled fingers. The air in the station grew colder still, and Seth's breath came out in misty puffs, as though he were standing in the middle of a snowstorm. "No!" Seth shouted, his panic surging like wildfire through his veins. He darted toward the door, slamming his palm against it. But the door wouldn't budge. It was like hitting a wall. The old man's laughter filled the room, harsh and echoing. It came from all directions at once, as if the very walls were alive with it. "It's too late for you now. You've looked into it. The mirror, it sees you, boy. And now it wants you." Seth backed away, his pulse pounding in his ears. The figure in the mirror was pressing against the glass now, its body folding and distorting in unnatural ways as it reached for him. It was impossibly close. Seth could feel the heat of its breath, even though he hadn't moved. A sudden noise, a crack, loud enough to pierce the thick silence, reverberated through the gas station. Seth turned, eyes wide, only to find that the cracked mirror was splitting open, the glass shattering and spilling out like liquid. The jagged edges of the glass glowed an unnatural white, almost as if they were alive, and in the fragments of the mirror he could see things that didn't belong. For a fleeting moment, Seth thought he saw something, or someone else in the shards of glass, a face that looked like his, but not quite, his own eyes, hollow and dark, staring back at him with the same twisted smile the creature had. The reflection of himself, but not himself. It wasn't just the mirror, it was everywhere. Everywhere he looked, the distorted, empty versions of him were staring back, coming from the walls, from the floor, from the broken glass. They were inside him. Seth stumbled backward, his mind raced. He needed to leave. He needed to escape. But the air was thick, and the walls felt like they were closing in. Seth's vision blurred as he stumbled back, the world around him spinning in a dizzying whirl. His pulse thundered in his ears, and the feeling of suffocating pressure increased with every passing second. The mirrors, the fragments of the shattered glass, seemed to multiply, each shard reflecting more versions of himself. Distorted, hollow versions grinning widely as they stepped closer to the real him. He couldn't breathe. The air felt thick, saturated with something dark, something ancient. The walls around him felt like they were pressing inward, and every reflection of his face in the glass grew more twisted, more unnatural. He could feel the cold creeping into his bones, seeping through his skin like a heavy fog. Get out now." Seth's hands shook uncontrollably as he fumbled for the door handle again, desperate to escape, to flee from this nightmare. His fingers scraped against the cold metal, but the door remained solid, unyielding. It was as if the very building had become alive, as if it was part of something much larger, something that wasn't meant to be understood. He turned around, eyes wide, desperately searching for a way out. The shattered mirror shards gleamed with an eerie light, and from the corner of his eye he saw it, the thing in the mirror, the creature stepping closer. It had broken through the surface of the glass. It wasn't just in the reflection anymore. It was here in the room with him, moving between the shards of broken glass like a living nightmare. Seth's legs shook beneath him, but there was nowhere to run. The figure's mouth stretched wide, impossibly wide, revealing rows of jagged, serrated teeth that gleamed like knives in the faint light. Its eyes, hollow and black, locked onto him with a predatory hunger. "You shouldn't have come here." The voice was cold, malevolent, seeping into his mind like ice water filling the cracks of a dam. He could hear it not only in his ears but in the depths of his thoughts, echoing through his mind, reverberating in every corner of his being. Seth's head spun. He couldn't think. His body felt heavy, weighed down by some invisible force. The air seemed to close in on him, the whispers from the shattered glass growing louder, more intense. The walls pulsed, the floor beneath his feet shaking with some primal rhythm that only the mirror could understand. "Let me out," Seth screamed, his voice breaking. He lunged for the door again, his palms slipping against the smooth, cold surface. But this time, as his fingers pressed against the metal, he felt something wrong. The door didn't just refuse to open. It responded. A jagged crack appeared along the metal, splintering open like a wound. The crack spread, growing wider and wider until the door tore itself apart in front of him, revealing a tunnel of darkness beyond. Seth staggered back, eyes wide with terror. The black void beyond the door seemed to pull at him, as if it were a vortex, dragging him into the depths of something far worse than just a forgotten gas station. Suddenly the figure in the mirror, or whatever it was, lunged forward. Its distorted body reached towards Seth, its claws scraping the ground with a hideous screech that made his stomach turn. The thing's grin was impossibly wide now, its teeth gleaming like a set of serrated blades, a grotesque mouth that stretched to an inhuman length. Seth froze. He couldn't move. His body was rooted to the spot, as if it had been tethered to the air itself. The thing's shadow enveloped him, drowning him in darkness as it reached out, its cold, clawed fingers brushing against his skin. And then it spoke. "You are mine now." Its voice wasn't just a sound. It was a feeling, cold, suffocating, relentless. It dug into his mind, clawing at his thoughts, taking root in his soul. Seth gasped, his lungs constricting as he tried to breathe. The thing was too close, its touch icy and slick. He could feel the edges of his mind fraying, unraveling like threads in a storm. He turned, his feet finally obeying him as he bolted toward the dark tunnel behind the door. The floor buckled beneath his feet as he ran, and the shadows seemed to follow, stretching and twisting, reaching for him like claws trying to drag him down. But something was different now. The air felt wrong. He wasn't running through a hallway anymore. He was running through a distorted space, one that bent and twisted as though it was made of liquid. The walls stretched in impossible angles, the ceiling disappearing into endless voids above him. The floor seemed to pulse beneath his feet, warping as though it had a life of its own. The tunnel, the hallway, the gas station. It wasn't real. None of it was. Seth wasn't sure where he was anymore, but he could feel the weight of the mirrors, all of them, pressing down on him from every angle. They were everywhere, reflecting his every move, his every breath. They were watching, waiting, pulling him further into the void. "You can't escape," the voice in his head whispered. "There is no way out. The mirrors are always watching. You are already here. You are already one of us." Seth stumbled, his legs shaking beneath him, but he kept running, pushing himself forward, even as his body screamed for rest. The darkness ahead of him seemed to close in, but he refused to stop. He had to escape. He had to make it out before the thing caught him. He didn't know what would happen when it did. He didn't want it, but just as he thought he saw a sliver of light ahead, something small, something hopeful, a sound echoed from the walls. A voice. Not in his head this time, but coming from somewhere just behind him. "You shouldn't have come here." It was the old man's voice. Soft, unhindered. But this time, it wasn't just the voice of someone warning him. It was the voice of someone who knew, who had seen what waited in the dark. Seth turned to face him, and the old man stood there, still smiling, but his face had changed. His eyes were no longer dull. They were glowing, a faint, sickly green that shone with an unnatural light. And behind him, in the depths of the mirror's shattered glass, Seth saw it again. Its twisted limbs were coming out of the shards of glass, dragging itself into the world like a nightmare made flesh. Seth's legs turned to jelly, as the old man's glowing eyes fixed on him, their green light too bright, too unnatural. The air around him felt stifling, thick with an oppressive weight, pressing down on his chest, suffocating him. His heartbeat quickened, hammering in his ears, and the sound of his breath came out ragged. It felt as though the world had gone still, too still. The only movement was the grotesque creature, now emerging from the shards of the shattered mirror, its impossibly long limbs stretching forward like branches of a tree in a windless night. The thing's black, empty eyes never left Seth. Its twisted, elongated fingers scraped the floor, leaving deep gouges in the stone as it crawled closer. The jagged edges of the broken mirror still gleamed, and as Seth looked back, he saw his reflection staring at him from every single shard. But it wasn't just his reflection. There were other figures too. Shadows, moving like they were waiting to take his place. "Do you see it, boy?" The old man's voice broke the silence, low and rasping like dry leaves rustling in the wind. "You can't escape it, none of us can." Seth's stomach churned as the thing moved forward, its body twitching with each sickening step. Its grin, the same twisted smile from the mirrors, widened further, splitting its face open like a grotesque wound. He felt as if it was pulling at him, drawing him in, its presence heavy in his chest, like a weight that was too much to bear. "No," Seth breathed, his voice barely above a whisper. His feet shuffled back, desperate to put distance between himself and the thing. But the world seemed to shift, to bend around him. The walls twisted and pulsed, and the hallway stretched on endlessly, becoming a maze of mirrors, reflections, and shadows. The darkness seemed to warp with every step he took, closing in on him like a trap. "You can't run from it." The old man's voice was closer now, louder, almost a growl. It has you now." Seth spun around, fear clawing at him, but all he saw was more darkness, more mirrors reflecting him. Each shard of glass revealed another version of him, distorted and warped. He reached out to them, desperate to escape into one of the mirrors, but the reflections were not him anymore. They were something else. Suddenly the floor beneath his feet buckled, and the walls shook violently. A loud, inhuman growl echoed through the void, rattling the very air. The thing was close now. Seth could feel it, its breath hot against the back of his neck. He turned, but the creature was not behind him. It was in front of him, standing tall, towering over him, with its grotesque grin stretching wider than humanly possible. Seth's breath hitched. There was nowhere to run. The walls pressed against him from every side, and the mirrors seemed to come alive, their reflections twisting, pulling like the very essence of the room was shifting with every passing moment. The old man chuckled softly, as if savoring Seth's panic. "It's always like this. You think you can escape, but the mirrors, they know. They always know. And once they have you, you're here. Forever." "Please," Seth gasped, his voice cracking. He could feel the cold, heavy presence of the thing closing in on him, its fingers stretching toward him. It was so close now. He could hear the rasp of its breath, cold and suffocating. "I don't want this. Please just let me go." The old man's grin stretched wider, and for a brief moment, Seth thought he saw something else behind him. Something far worse than the thing in the mirror. A shadow, a shape, an entity far older than the mirrors themselves. It was reaching from the darkness, like a spider's leg creeping out of the abyss, just waiting to pull him in. "You never had a choice," the old man said softly, his voice carrying an unsettling finality. "The mirrors have chosen you. You belong to them now. To us." With that, the creature lunged. Its claws tore through the air, moving impossibly fast, faster than Seth's mind could comprehend. He barely had time to react before it was upon him, its sharp talons grazing his shoulder, sending waves of icy pain through his body. He screamed, the sound echoing in the void, but there was no one to hear. The old man's laughter, cold and cruel, rang in his ears as the thing's hands clamped around his throat, lifting him off the ground with a strength that defied reason. Seth struggled, gasping for breath, as his vision blurred. The creature's eyes, Those black, soulless pits stared down at him with an expression of hunger, as though it had been waiting for this moment, for him to finally understand that there was no escape. His hands shot up, grabbing at the creature's cold, skeletal wrist, trying to pull it away, but it was like gripping stone. The creature's grin widened, and its voice echoed in his mind. "You are nothing, just another soul trapped by the mirrors, and you will stay with us, in the dark forever." Seth's vision dimmed as the creature's grip tightened. His lungs burned for air, and his thoughts became distant, as if they were fading into the blackness that surrounded him. Everything felt empty, hollow, just as he thought the darkness would consume him. He felt something flicker, something deep inside him, a spark of resistance, of willpower that refused to be swallowed whole. He gathered all the strength he had left, and kicked his legs, pushing his body forward with a final surge of energy. He struck the creature's face hard. His boot connected with its jaw, but the impact wasn't like kicking flesh. It felt like kicking stone, and yet the creature flinched. For the briefest moment, its grip loosened. Seth didn't hesitate. His hands shot up to the creature's arm and twisted, his fingers pressing into the dark, cold skin, like he was trying to pry apart an ancient lock. For a moment, nothing happened, but then he felt it crack. It wasn't just the creature's grip breaking. It was something deeper, something older. The very foundation of the mirrors, the world around him, shattering. The thing screeched, a sound that made Seth's teeth rattle in his skull. But he didn't stop. He pushed harder, pulling at the creature's arm, his heart pounding in his chest. And then, as if by some miracle, the thing let go. The creature stumbled back, disappearing into the darkness with a final spine-chilling screech. Seth collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. The world around him spun, and he could feel the darkness trying to pull him back in. But he was free. For now, Seth's mind raced as he struggled to catch his breath, his body trembling with the aftershocks of the creature's assault. His heart thudded in his chest, each beat a reminder that he was still alive, at least for now. He forced himself to his feet, the cold floor beneath him seeming to pulse in rhythm with his racing pulse. The air still felt thick, oppressive, like something dark and ancient was breathing right behind him, waiting for the moment to strike again. The mirror shards around him reflected his every movement, but Seth didn't dare look into them. Not now. He had seen too much, felt too much, and the thought of seeing more of the twisted versions of himself, of the thing that had almost claimed him, was too much to bear. He needed to escape. But how? The door had already sealed itself shut, and the hallway around him continued to stretch impossibly, with mirrors that now seemed to grow out of the walls, turning the space into a labyrinth of glass and shadow. It felt like the mirrors themselves were alive, reaching out hungry for him. "You think you can escape this place?" The voice of the old man cut through the silence, sharp and cruel. Seth whirled around, his legs shaking beneath him. But the man wasn't there, only the darkness and the reflections, twisting and bending, as if they were alive. The laughter came next, louder this time, more insistent. Seth's skin crawled as the sound echoed from all around him, a cacophony of mockery and dread. It was like a wave, rising in intensity, crashing over him with every breath. "You're still here. The mirrors don't forget. They never forget." The old man's voice lingered, hollow and disembodied. Seth's eyes flicked back to the shattered fragments of the mirror, now far more numerous than they had been moments ago. The pieces were no longer scattered randomly. They had begun to shift, moving in synchrony, aligning themselves with unnatural precision. They were forming something. His stomach twisted, a knot of fear tightening in his gut. He was not alone. There in the reflections he saw it again. The thing, its black empty eyes locked onto his. And for a moment, Seth thought he was going to choke on the panic that rushed up his throat. Its silhouette was larger now, its body taking shape in the shards, twisting, coiling, stretching, and it was looking directly at him. The mirrors had changed, no longer just a reflection of the room, Now the room itself seemed to be slipping away, replaced by the fractured images of the thing, growing closer, reaching out from every angle. There was no escaping it, no running away. It had already crawled out from the mirror. It was here, within reach. A shadow fell over him, and Seth's blood ran cold. Behind him there was a sudden movement, a shift in the darkness. He whirled around, but the old man wasn't standing behind him. Instead, a thin, translucent shape flickered in and out of existence. It was the reflection of someone, but not quite someone Seth knew. The face was blurry, out of focus, the body twisted and contorted in a way that seemed impossible. It flickered and shifted like an old film reel, but its eyes, they were familiar. They were his eyes. Seth staggered back, his hands trembling. No, 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 this is wrong. His reflection stepped forward, moving, denting from him. But with every motion, the glass seemed to warp. The face in the reflection became clearer, but its grin grew impossibly wide, stretching across its face like it was made of liquid. The more Seth watched, the more the reflection seemed to feel like it was real. Too real. It was becoming him, but it was like his shadow had taken on a life of its own, a distorted, twisted, and malevolent version of himself. "Are you ready to join us?" the reflection whispered, its voice like a broken echo of his own, but hollow, dripping with malice. Seth's legs gave out beneath him, and he collapsed to the ground, hands reaching out to steady himself against the cold floor. He could still hear the laughter of the old man, fading and swelling, as though it was coming from every corner, every shard of glass. There was a chill in the air now, and Seth realized, with a sickening clarity, that the room had shifted once more. He was no longer in the gas station. The mirrors had pulled him in deeper, into something much worse. It was no longer a simple gas station bathroom. The world around him was transforming, unraveling. What had once been a tangible, recognizable space was now shifting into an endless, shifting expanse of broken glass and shifting shadow. There were no walls, no ceiling, just mirrors that stretched infinitely, an endless void of fractured reality. And in the middle of it all stood the thing, its massive, contorted body reaching for him, slithering between the shards of broken glass. Its arms stretched further, and as it neared, Seth could hear it whispering his name, his real name, in a voice that sounded like the wind howling in the dead of night. "Seth, Seth." The cold dread in his chest surged again, choking him. This wasn't just a nightmare. This was something far worse. This was real. The mirrors weren't reflections anymore. They were doors. He tried to back away, but his feet wouldn't move. His body felt paralyzed, locked in place by an unseen force. His throat constricted as the thing's distorted shape loomed larger in the corner of his vision. Seth. The mirrors seemed to be closing in on him, their shards growing sharper, more jagged, like knives. The distorted versions of himself, the reflections, started to move too. They weren't just reflections anymore. They were him. They were him in every direction, filling the room, the mirrors, every single version of him. The floor was covered in them now, in the cracked shards, in the reflections that distorted with every breath. "You don't belong here," the old man's voice rasped from behind, and when Seth turned, he saw him standing there again, his figure bathed in a sickly green light. His face was no longer just old and cracked. It was decaying, rotting as if it had been trapped here for years. Seth's mind raced for an answer, for a way out, but there was none. He was trapped. The room was closing in. The mirrors had taken him, and the thing, was coming for him. The weight of the darkness pressing down on Seth was unbearable. His limbs felt like lead. Each breath he took labored as if the very air was trying to suffocate him. The room, the mirrors, the reflections, the old man, everything felt wrong, too wrong. It wasn't just the gas station bathroom anymore. This place, this space had taken on a life of its own, bending and twisting like something that wasn't meant to exist. Every inch of the room seemed to be alive with whispers, with promises, with dread. Seth's pulse hammered in his ears, louder now, drowning out the voice of the old man, drowning out everything except the deep, sinking feeling in his gut that he was running out of time. The mirrors that surrounded him, the fragments of shattered glass, all began to pull together as if they were alive. Their jagged edges seemed to reach out toward him like claws, drawing him closer, pulling him in. There was no escaping now. The walls, the floor, the ceiling, all of them seemed to pulse and bend, warping with the shape of the mirrors, forming a maze of reflections. "You thought you could escape," the old man croaked, his voice coming from behind him, echoing in every direction. Seth spun around, but the man was nowhere to be seen. Instead, the shadows around him deepened, as though they were consuming the space. The air grew colder. "You thought the mirrors were just glass," the old man continued, his voice growing more distant and yet more present at the same time. "But they are far more than that. Far more than just what your eyes can see." The thing in the mirrors, the creature with its hollow eyes and twisted limbs, was getting close. It slithered between the shards of glass, like a predator stalking its prey, and Seth's chest tightened with terror as its presence loomed larger. It had been chasing him through this nightmare for what felt like hours, but now it was here. In every reflection, in every cracked shard, it was waiting. "You've seen the truth," the old man's voice murmured again, so soft it almost sounded like a sigh. "There is no way out. You belong to the mirrors now. You always have." Seth's head spun. His body trembled violently as his hands shot out, desperately trying to push against the walls around him. But they didn't budge. The mirrors pulsed, vibrating with a rhythm that was too unnatural, too wrong. He could hear the thing's breath now, a slow, steady inhale that echoed in the hollow of his skull as if the creature were inside him. It was getting closer. Seth felt its presence crawling along his skin like something just behind his vision, something he couldn't escape. It was in his mind now, its whispers filling his thoughts with cold dread, with promises of an eternity behind the glass. "Let it take you," the voice of the old man urged, as though it were a command now. "It is the only way." But Seth wasn't listening. He couldn't listen. He refused to listen. His breath came faster, panicked now, his mind scrambling for an answer. There had to be a way out. There had to be. He had fought too hard, bled too much to give up now. Suddenly his eyes flicked to the shattered pieces of glass littering the floor. They caught the dim light in a way that made Seth's breath catch in his throat. There, amidst the debris, he saw something, or rather someone. It was his own reflection, but this time, it wasn't warped. It wasn't twisted. It was him, but not him. The reflection was perfect, unbroken. It stared at him, its eyes calm, its expression serene. But Seth could feel the difference. It was wrong. The reflection didn't belong here. It didn't belong to this world. Seth's heart skipped a beat. He moved toward the mirror shards, his legs shaky but determined. The whispers in his head were getting louder, more urgent. "It's too late. You can't escape. You've already been claimed." But Seth pushed forward anyway. The calm reflection was the only thing he had left. Maybe, just maybe, there was something about it, something hidden within it, that he hadn't seen before. He reached out a trembling hand, and for a moment, everything stilled. The whispers faded. The creature's growl paused. The air around him seemed to hold its breath. His fingers brushed against the smooth surface of the glass. It was cold, colder than anything he had ever touched. It felt like a boundary, a barrier. And in that moment, Seth understood. This wasn't just a mirror. It was the key. It was the door. With a sudden desperate cry, Seth pushed himself forward, his palms slamming into the cold glass. The world around him shattered in an instant, fracturing into 1,000 pieces. His body was pulled forward, sucked into the glass with a force he couldn't fight. The darkness enveloped him, filling every inch of his body, and for the first time, he realized what it meant to truly disappear. The room, the mirrors, the gas station, everything vanished. There was no more air, no more walls, only glass, only the endless reflection of him. And then, he was inside. But inside what? Was it a realm, a prison, a void? It didn't matter. Seth had escaped the thing, the creature that had haunted him through every reflection. But what had he truly escaped to? Was it worse than what he had been running from? In the stillness of the glass, Seth stood. His reflection no longer seemed to belong to him. It was no longer his own. And as the last traces of his consciousness faded into the dark, he heard one final whisper, "You'll never leave." The mirrors watched. And Seth, he was nothing but a part of them now.